back with 2 more chapters from Zoey and Sassfrass, Monsters and Mold. I'm going to read to you chapter 9 and 10 today. 9 is a pretty decently long chapter, but 10 is really short. And it's been a while since I put any chapters up. There are only a few people who've heard my latest chapter as of this filming, so I was kind of waiting, but I thought, well, better keep going. I want to make sure that we get to finish the book. So, you might think back, what was happening? It's been a while since I've read it. Let's see. Zoey, well, we know she was trying to cure the mold problem from the monster, right? He wanted to go to the dance, but was really embarrassed about his moldy fur issue. So Zoey came up with a way that she could test different preservatives, that's right, to see how she could make it so the monster's fur wouldn't mold. So I believe she had 5 samples of monster fur. She was going to use 1 as the control sample. She wasn't going to do anything to it. And then 4 other samples that she was going to work on developing an experiment for. So that's what this chapter is all about. Chapter 9, the moldy fur experiment. I grabbed my bags of monster fur and my science notebook and went out into the kitchen. I started writing down all the bits of my experiment so I wouldn't forget what I'd done. It would probably take a day or 2 before I could even tell if the mold wasn't growing on some of my test fur. I could definitely forget a lot in 2 days. Question: what will stop the mold from growing on Gorp's fur? Now I needed to make my guess. Which preservatives did I think would work? Most of the stuff in the kitchen used salt. It seemed to work for an awful lot of things, so it would probably work on monster fur too. Hypothesis: I think salt will stop the mold from growing on Gorp's fur. I'm going to show you just so you can see Zoey's writing. So she has the question for her experiment, and then she has her hypothesis. You remember, a hypothesis is like a really good guess. It's an educated guess. It's based on something you know or something you think about what will happen, right? So she's thinking, okay, you know, salt works on a lot of things in my kitchen. I hope it works on Gorp's fur too. I think it will. That's what she thinks. I don't know. All right, now to decide how much of each preservative to add. I needed to add the same amount each time. Let's see, maybe 2 teaspoons would be enough? That seemed good to me. Procedure: 1. Put the same amount of fur in each Ziploc bag. 2. Don't add anything to one bag. Add 2 teaspoons of oil to another. Add 2 teaspoons of vinegar to another. Add 2 teaspoons of salt to another. Add 2 teaspoons of sugar to another. Step 3, seal the bags. Step 4, put the bags in the same place in the barn and check every day to see if mold grows. Whew, that was a lot of writing. I shook out my hand. Does this remind you of the how-to writing that I posted on Seesaw? Her science investigation totally has step-by-step numbered directions. She didn't draw pictures with them, but same idea. You know, if you wanted to, at some point, you could do how-to writing about how to do a science experiment, kind of like Jenny Bender has been doing each week for science. Something to think about. Okay, let's keep going. First, I sealed the bag with nothing but fur in it. I labeled it so I could remember that it was the one where I didn't add anything. The nothing bag should grow mold like normal. In a few days, I could hold it next to the other bags to see if they were doing a better job of stopping the mold. Oops, did I show you this? I can't remember. Sorry. I got a new bag and added 2 teaspoons of vinegar and swished it around until all the monster fur in the bag was wet. I crinkled my nose. Blech. I sealed the bag so I wouldn't have to smell it anymore. I labeled it vinegar. I did the same thing for the oil bag to show you, because she's making her black face for the vinegar. I wonder if you're like Zoey, the smell of vinegar bugs you. You're like, it's not so bad. It doesn't bug me too much. Things were going just fine until I added sugar to the fourth bag. Erg, this isn't working. Sassfrass, the sugar keeps falling to the bottom of the bag. Most of it isn't even touching the fur. Maybe it would be fine? No. It was definitely bugging me that it wasn't coating the fur like the vinegar and the oil had. Woof. Suddenly, a big ball of fluffy fur was next to me on the counter. I was about to yell, "Sassafras, off the counter!" when I realized he was bumping his head against the jelly jar. That was weird. Sassafras liked to eat bugs, not jelly. Just to show you, in case you didn't notice that before. I didn't really notice what Sassafras was doing. I popped him down off the counter. Maybe he was trying to tell me to put jelly back in the fridge. I picked up the jar and glanced at the ingredients one last time. Oh, water. I turned around and picked up the can of beans. It had water too, right? The beans used salt mixed in the water, and the jelly used sugar mixed in the water. Of course. I added 2 teaspoons of water and 2 teaspoons of salt to a little bowl, and 2 teaspoons of water and 2 teaspoons of sugar to another little bowl. I stirred them both really well. Then I added 2 teaspoons of the salt water to the salt bag and 2 teaspoons of the sugar water to the sugar bag. This time when I switched the ingredients around, the sugar and the salt water coated the monster fur instead of falling to the bottom of the bag. In my science journal, I wrote down the change I'd made to the sugar and salt bags. Wow, she's really keeping track of everything in her journal. Clapped my hands together. Perfect. I was ready to move everything to the barn. Just then, my dad walked into the kitchen. I froze. Do you remember why Zoey might react like that to her dad seeing her experiment? If you remember. Mom had told me that Dad couldn't see anything magical. Would these bags look empty to him? He'd probably think this was the weirdest experiment ever. Dad walked over and ruffled my hair. Experimenting again, Zoey? What's this one about? I glanced over at my notes. Monster fur? That's a cute idea. Are you running a pretend experiment? He lifted a bag up to the light. It might make it more fun if you had some actual fur in there. Maybe Sassafrass could donate some. Sassafrass growled. I laughed. The bag did look empty to me. If the things I was trying didn't stop the mold from growing on his fur, there wouldn't be enough time to run another experiment before the monster ball. And if Gorp was still moldy, he'd stay home. He'd stay home from the dance again. My heart dropped. He had to go. This experiment had to work. Zoey getting ready. That is the end of chapter 9. How glad are you that we're going to read chapter 10 right now? If that was a long time for you and you want to pause the video now and watch it another day, that's okay. But I'll tell you, chapter 10 is just 3 short pages. None of them are full pages. I have 4 short pages. chapter 10 is called Success? Question mark. It was hard to wait, but mold needs time to grow. So Sassafrass and I did our barn to see how the experiment was going. The first bag I checked was the bag with nothing added. There was definitely mold everywhere. The oil bag. There was some mold, but not as much as the nothing bag. So oil had worked a little bit. Then I looked at the salt, vinegar, and sugar bags. I squealed so loudly that Sassafrass jumped in the air with all his fur puffed out. I dropped my science notebook and grabbed Sassafrass and twirled him around. Let's see, just that pictures for now. You might be making a prediction why Zoey is reacting this way. Probably have a good idea. It worked, Sassafrass, it worked. Salt and vinegar and sugar all worked. Right then, the barn doorbell rang. I ran to the door and flung it open. I was so excited I hugged Gorp before I even said hello. It worked. I know what to do, I cheered. Gorp's eyes got huge. It worked. He was so happy he didn't even notice Sassafrass purring and weaving around. And Sassafrass, oh my goodness. Why does Sassafrass love Gorp so much? I wonder if we'll find out if there's like an answer. I grabbed Gorp's arm and pulled him into the barn. Look, we have 3 choices: salt, sugar, and vinegar. I held up the bags. A smile lit up Gorp's face. Which should we choose? Good question. You have an awful lot of fur. Let me run in the house and see what we have the most of. I was halfway out the door when I heard a scuffling noise behind me. I turned around to see Gorp backing into a corner of the barn with a terrified look on his face. I guess he'd finally noticed purring Sassafrass at his feet. I skipped up my cat and ran into the house. That is the end of chapter 10. We're getting closer to the end of the book. Chapter 11, which I will read next time, is called Decisions. Let's see, we have chapter 11, 12, 13. I think 13 is the last chapter. Yeah. Almost done. It's been a really good one. What do you think will happen next? Do you have guesses about which preservative they'll use? Do you think Gorp will get to go to the ball? I'm curious how this book will wrap up. I hope you've been enjoying it. I'll see you next time.